O hei ni taina na nisahit ba Aaniiih Blake Stiffarm na hasihana. It's good to see everybody here. My name is Storm Being Man. Blake Stiffarm is what they call me, and my parents are Philip Stiffarm and Truby Stiffarm. Her name is All Blossom. His Indian name is Nobby, I think. Now he never got one, but his parents are Paul and May Stiffarm, one who walks swift and sweetgrass woman. And my mom's folks are Bill and Lucy Smith, Sitting Eagle and Holy House woman. And I've been lucky enough to serve on the Fort Belknap Community Council as the Gros-Ventre at-large rep, elected by Gros-Ventre voters. And yeah, I'm happy to be here today. I enjoy getting information out to the public and everything. So yeah, happy to do this interview. So yeah, I was really lucky, I believe, and they picked me to be the land chairman, oversight, or committee chair, whatever. And I worked in land before that, and I got my degree in resource conservation. So I had an idea of, a vision, kind of how we wanted to do this. I worked for USDA before that, and I kind of got an idea how these conservation programs work. And I moved to tribal land. We got some NRCS contracts going there. We also got some BOR wells going. And after tribal land, when I got on the council, I already had a good relationship with the staff. And then we got a new director, and we just, we kind of took right off. I think we're doing pretty decent. We've raised the revenue in tribal land by 230% the first year, and this year we're at like 340 right now. We're anticipating 400% from that first year. So I think we're doing good, and we got these the wells and everything, and the NRCS contracts are on. Like when I left land, they didn't just die. They kept them going. So that was really good. And it's going to total out to 21 wells in the range units on the reservation, 8 new ones and 13 rehabbed ones in the range units that were identified as high priority in the ARMP. So yeah, we're following that as the blueprint, which it really is. It's all from producer input, and it's what the people want to guide their land management with. And that's what we're using, is the ARMP. And it was a struggle to get that recognized too, because many of you guys know there's, we had a good little, not really a spat, but just kind of a, everyone wasn't in agreement of where the document was, when it was enacted, and when it was signed. But we were able to square all that away, and that document allows the tribe, as far as land management, it allows them to be the regulatory authority on the reservation. So there's no more ambiguity between, like BIA said this and the tribe said this over here. There's one set of rules on the reservation now with that ARMP, and that goes a long way, I think, for land management, when there's no ambiguity about the rules, and allotted, trust, fee. Everything inside the exteriors is under that resolution, or that or the tribe's regulation according to the ARMP. So yeah, I was really fortunate, like I say, to be the land chairman this round. So yeah. Geez, I think I will. Yeah, I'm pretty confident I can help the tribe with this stuff that I know how to do. This conservation and everything. And what we always want to do is we want to be fair to everyone. and we don't want to force anything on anybody. You know, I've always said that is we want producer input. We want to have meetings. We don't we don't want people to feel forced. You know, I mean, we want this to be a harmonious deal. You know, so I think hopefully if I've done that, and then maybe I'll be re-elected. You know, so I'm hoping that I could continue this because we started a lot of things here. You know, and I'd like to see them through to completion for sure. I mean, it's no one wants to leave their projects unfinished, you know. So, but we'll see. It's a crazy climate, you know. Council it needs to step up a little bit, I think, you know, as far as disseminating information and keeping the public informed about these things, because I know when I was just a tribal member, you know, I wanted to be informed. So for sure, that's what I try to do to people. You know, I put the minutes out on Facebook, just however we can help people be informed. You know, that's what we want to do. So, but yeah, I guess yes, I will run in this upcoming election. Oof. Well, I like to think that I'm persistent, you know, and I have a little bit of education, and I have experience in these areas that I've chosen to do these projects in. So I believe, you know, I could oversee them and get them done. And I'm really all for, you know, making our tribe solvent. You know, we're carrying a large amount of debt. And we have programs that can help us with that, you know, conservation programs. We have, I've been touting this for several years now, and we finally got it available for the reservation. It's called CREP. It pays you a rental rate for your land and has cost share, you know, for water developments, fence, you know, things like that. And it's available only for tribal members and only on Fort Belknap lands. Up to 625,000 acres, and that's from the FSA. It's a form of CRP, so that's going to go a long ways. You know, if you it's potentially millions of dollars a year in rental payments that they're going to pay the tribe. You know, for it's really a dream scenario. You know, like they're going to pay us to manage our land in a good way. You know, I mean, it's really a win-win, you know. I mean, so, you know, we get to get payment for our lands as they're developing. Our producers get the benefits as well with developed land, water, you know, that all equals heavier calves. You know, so I mean, it's we're looking to inject, you know, a shot of adrenaline into our ag community around here. And we really want to start focusing on our youth, you know, because our average producer age is like 60 some or whatever, you know, and it might even be 70 on the res. but yeah, you know, there's, you know, I bet, you know, you ask around or look around, you know, you can't find a young farmer, you know, there's very few of them. So, I mean, if anything we can do to encourage that, you know, we have 10,000 acres of irrigable land in our valley there, you know, and up to 16,000 more that are practically irrigable on the reservation. So there's a lot of potential there in Blaine County. 2 years ago, you know, you could look on those ag surveys, and for an irrigated, our irrigated cropland was going for $63 an acre, you know, in Blaine County. So I mean, even if we could get 70-80% of that, you know, with all of our acres, it's, you know, we got a lot of, not to mention training new farmers, getting new things going like that. You know, that irrigable land's a gold mine down there, you know, and we've got to take advantage of it. It's, that system's been in a state of disrepair for decades, you know, and I think they deferred the maintenance on it for over 20 years now. So we need to get that rehabbed and into operation, you know, and maybe, yeah, I could transition maybe to the water bill from here. You know, I think that's going to be a big part of that. You know, there's $414 million to rehab our irrigation in there, you know, so we have to get started on a expenditure plan and a project. We have in our bill, you know, it cites the 19 comprehensive water development plan in there, which was prepared for us by Wold, you know, Uncle Wold, everybody knows him. And we're going to do that, use that plan with our ARMP, and we're going to figure out, you know, we're going to have to bet on ourselves here, I think, you know, because there's monies identified in the bill for planning, you know, design, analysis, environmental things like that. But we can't access those funds until the bill is passed. So, you know, what we want to do, and I'll credit John Allen for this, is we want to be as shovel ready as we can when that bill does pass, so that, you know, we have 10 years before our funding becomes discretionary. And we got to maximize that. You know, it's on us. We can't wait for people to rescue us. You know, we got to be proactive. We want to get this environmental done on the smaller projects, you know, because, you know, that big dam for that reservoir, that's going to be a major environmental thing. But the things that we can take care of that aren't going to cost six figures, we want to take care of those, you know, and bet on ourselves by doing that, and just show, you know, that we're ready for this. We've been waiting for this, and we're going to grasp our opportunity. You know, we're not going to be sitting here scrambling around to get ready after it passes. You know, we want to get a jump on that for sure. And there's a lot of controversy too about the water compact. You know, I mean, and there's always a risk, you know, when you're going into an agreement with someone else. But, you know, I think the way it's been explained to me and the way that I interpret it, you know, by reading those things, is we're going to have to grasp this and take it on ourselves. You know, it's they're giving us a life source down there, and I think, you know, if we got to take advantage of that, or else, you know, what kind of leaders are we? You know, we got to get ready for that, get our lands into production. You know, there's going to be a lot of construction around here. There's going to be an influx of workers, you know, things like that. So there's a lot to look forward to here if the bill can get passed, and if we could get a jump on on the planning and design for these projects. You know, there's a lot of projects. There's these southern tributary irrigation projects. I believe there's 7 of those. You know, there's the big reservoir at 3 Mile. There's a pipeline from the diversion point to 3 Mile. That's going to be a giant pipeline. There's just, and then the rehab of the irrigation system itself, you know, is going to be a massive undertaking. You know, because I think there's 97 miles of canals, laterals, and ditches in our Milk River irrigation project there. So you just think all of that got to be rehabbed. You know, there's got to be new head gates, you know, things like that, new turnouts. And there's going to be a variety of irrigation systems too. You know, there's pivot and flood, gated pipe, border irrigation. You know, there's going to be all of these in there. And it's our job as leaders, you know, to find out where we can maximize our revenue with all these things, you know. And, you know, we got a lot of learning to do. I know I have a lot of learning to do. And it's, yeah, that goes kind of with the council too, you know. It's like, you jump in there and it's like a fire hose, you know, and you kind of got to figure out your leadership style and, you know, how you want to do things, how you want to take care of stuff. And, you know, I think, I think the community and the council, you know, they're not on the same page as to what the council should be doing all the time, you know, and it's tough, and there's no hard and fast rules for that either, you know. So I think, you know, a guy's got to do what he can, and, you know, hopefully the cream will shine through and it's interpreted in the right way, you know, I think. But, yeah, back to the water compact. I just think, you know, that we got to get that information out there that, you know, it's not signing our rights away, you know, it's quantifying them and taking them, you for ourselves, we're not going to be, there's all kind of disinformation and rumors, and, people just, it's tough to get good, clean information out there, because there's people that sometimes they're just against things, just, because, but, as our job as leaders, I think, is to, part of it anyway, is to, do what's best for the people, even if they can't see it, even if only you can see it, but you have to be sure of things like that, because it's on you when you make that big decision. So things like this I don't take lightly, and I've read that compact up and down, read about 10 versions of it at least, that's been, since I've been took an interest in this, probably in about 12 or so, 11. I listen to those old timers too, talking about it, and some of them are against it, some of them are for it. But what it comes down to, is we gotta place our trust in the government a little bit, but because they're the ones funding this, and if we can't go out and get this taken care of, by ourselves, I think, to be as ready as we can for that, I think that we'll be failing as leaders, so I really think we got to get started on that as quick as we can, just to show that we're ready, and the tribe needs to all be on that same page, because we're all going to have to work together, EPA, we're going to have to contract services. There's a lot of departments and everything that are going to have to be on the same page, because, if this does go through, when it does go through, it's going to be a flurry, and we can get lost in that flurry if we don't have a good plan, we don't have good benchmarks, for our progress. So I think a lot of that is still got to be done. We got to have strategic planning. We've had a couple sessions of that, but I think we need to have one that's, shovel-ready water plan specific. I think that's, that's gonna be one of the things for sure that we got to do, because we just got word kind of it's probably not going to go up for passing this in July, but we're looking at this later this fall. So, and we've been hearing that, ever since, it's going to be later, it's going to be later, and they asked us to seed some things at the last second last time too, and it's getting thinner and thinner, our bridge that we got on here. So I think it's gonna have to pass soon, and we're gonna have to be ready, and we're gonna have to be able to take care of this stuff, because we can choose to 638 a lot of that work, all of that work, I believe, except for the funds that BOR controls that go between St. Mary's mitigation and the Dodson Canal. So yeah, it's just for us to continue on by ourselves, we're gonna have to take care of this and get it in place for the generations to come, because that really is a gold mine up there. And then there's there's a lot of other lands that we could be developing for farmland. I think there's 82,000 acres of prime soils on the reservation, and they're not all accessible, but I mean, if we could maximize the output on those, whether it be from leasing or from our own people farming, that's what we have to use. This reservation was kind of intended for an agrarian lifestyle, so I think if we go along that, we have our plan, we have our ARMP, and I think we just follow that, and then it's hard to go wrong, when the will of the peoples is followed, like that, because these guys know best, the guys that are out there on the ground, and they are the ones that put that thing together, so I trust in our ARMP a lot. So yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the big things that comes to my mind right away is outdated thinking. I think there's opportunities, and there's things that happen that are just kind of outdated, and it's not I'm not pointing any fingers or anything, but I mean, as far as getting things done, everybody knows, the BIA is always kind of in a road blocking around, but they, I accept that they have to do their job, and it's their job to keep us in compliance with CFR and everything, so we need to do that. But there's just been some excessive things that we faced over the years, like they were trying to require us to get, a geologic study that would have cost $70,000 to implement a pipeline. It's just things like that don't make sense. We have to be able to negotiate and get beyond those. And as far as like outdated thinking, there's a generational gap kind of on the council. There's older and there's younger. I mean, we're all kind of old, but I mean, but there's seniors, and it's just, we're all products of our environment, and we're all products of the era we grew up in. So I think it's a little bit harder to get beyond that when you're ingrained in that for quite a bit. So, but I think we need progressive people in these seats, people that aren't afraid to take a chance or take on an entrepreneurial endeavor. I think because we really don't have much of that. We have individuals that have done it and made good for themselves, but there has been no only Island Mountain's probably the longest, and tribal construction, I guess, that have been in business the longest. The entrepreneurial stuff that the tribe does generally doesn't go too well. So that's another barrier that we got to get by, because we have to start generating revenue however we can. I think with these funding blocks and stuff that are coming, it's some of it doesn't directly, and natives are exempt on a lot of it, but I mean, still, if you're talking 30 or 40% cuts at the BIA, and we only have 3 employees there now, I mean, that's and no realty staff. That's another thing too. We have 0 realty staff at Fort Belknap. So the tribe is looking at 638ing that, and we have tribal employees from here who will be able to assist us with that, and we have 2 former BIA employees that work in land already. They're jumping all over that. They have a framework of the positions and personnel already. They have a budget. But I mean, we're eventually going to have to do this stuff ourselves. I think that's what we got to face too, is we're hoping that BIA can fund us a little bit at first, but we do realize that we're going to have to stand on our own 2 feet, and I think that's one of the things that the community at large has to realize too. I think, we got a lot of flack for stopping that assistance, and I mean, but we couldn't continue that way. The tribe would be bankrupt. It's as simple as that. It was our treasurer, our finance people were, we basically listened to them. Like they said, if we keep going at this rate, we're not going to have anything. And so we had to do that, but we still can't get our finances under control. And that's another thing that I'm trying to learn a lot on, because I don't really have the best understanding of financial systems and things like that, I mean, and our treasurer has really been helpful in explaining things like that, and our CFO, they break it down, and they don't, even though our questions could be, could seem really, really basic, they're really nice about them, and I think that's one thing I would probably say is, you should have before you run for council, you should have an idea of how the tribe's finances work. Because for me, that's been the steepest learning curve, and because I just never did deal with that, never dealt with budgets or things like that, and indirect cost or whatever, I mean, there's a lot of terms and things in there that you don't see as a regular employee. And like I say, it comes at you all at once, so you have to really think on your feet and try to be as informed as you can when you're making decisions, so there's a lot of stuff to learn. It's pretty, you're constantly learning. I try to learn every day, actually, and this job really helps. But it's not a job, I feel honored to do this, honestly, I mean, it is a big honor, and I was lucky enough, too, to be elected to the Grovon Treaty Committee, in 2016. So I take this service to my people, as serious as I can, and I try to help out wherever I can. But I think some of the ways that people have done that in the past, it could have helped the individual, but it kind of hurts the system overall. I think, when you got people running to the council and saying, hey, do this for me, you're bending or you're breaking policy, that puts us back a ways, and I don't think that's what the council's there for, Actually, if you look in the bylaws, we don't have any administrative authority, it's all about negotiating with state and federal agencies, borrowing money, making ordinances, assigning fees, things like that. It doesn't say, you have authority over all the employees. You could tell them whatever to do. That's not our job, I think our job should be to keep with the chain of command and try to keep the tribe running smoothly and efficiently. And then, when you got it, someone with perceived authority and they're saying, hey, I mean, that's not conducive to how we want to operate. I think we really got to get past that. And, I'm really in favor of policy, I always said that too, because it takes the human element out of it, that emotional appeal that you get from when people, they turn the tears on or whatever, I mean, it's a tough thing to balance, honestly it is, because, you don't want your people to suffer and you want to do whatever you can to help them, but you don't want to, taking backward steps when you're doing things like that. It's got to be done the right way, and I think there is a right way. It's just, honestly, I don't know it yet, but I'm looking and I'm trying to find it. But, we do have to get past this outdated thinking about, the council is like the big boss, that's not, I don't think that's it. It's, we're there to oversee things and guide, but not, look over people's shoulders and say, hey, you've missed your eye there, or whatever, you got to dot that I. I think, and I've been practicing that in, with the land department, they have a lot of autonomy. I just kind of say, this is like what we want to do. This is our aim, and you guys get her done, and they're performing exceptionally well, I think, in my eyes anyway. And it's a new philosophy down there, it's there's a lot of things that weren't enforced before, and we're trying to do it across the board and as fair as we can, and one of the things that got brought up recently is like our crossing permits, why do I got to do this? I only got to move across the road or whatever, or just another pasture inside here. But like, so, as the overall managers of the land, it doesn't look good if you don't know where all your cows are and how many, I mean, that crossing permit is what allows us to do that, and it's very important, because I mean, if someone asks me, like how many cows are on the res and I don't know, that's we should know that stuff, we should know how many AUMs we have, we should know how many cows we can stock at what time of year, when they need to move, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're just kind of behind the times, but it's been that way since what I believe 1935 was when the Soil Conservation Service started, and they start leveling land all across the High Line, all these conservation programs were big, 30s, 40s, 50s, but Fort Belknap never got any of that. We didn't get a USDA office on the reservation until 1994, I believe. So, we're quite a few years behind the rest of the High Line as far as, getting our conservation systems in place. But we're making up that time right now. I think, you know, we're going to be, we're going to have fruitful and productive lands if we just stay on this course, get our irrigation system developed, develop our land, you know, with water. All our leases are going to be solid, good fence. You know, I mean, there's a lot of goals that that we've set, and then I think we're on our way to meeting them. You know, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Aaniiih then. Yeah. Hey, hey. For sure. You know, that sets us apart, man. And you know, one thing in the modern era that sets us apart is we own a lot of our land. You know, we're a large land-based tribe, and we, you know, it's in the high 90% of how much land we own. You know, and that's really something to be proud of. You know, there's reservations around that are minority landowners on their own res. You know, so I think that's something really to be proud of, and that's a big reason. You know, the land buyback and stuff. We have a large bank of tribal land now. You know, 1/1 tribal T-tracts. So these guys in the decades before, they didn't have that big tribal land base that they could kind of build off of, and you know, it really gives us an advantage. You know, nowadays that we're especially implementing conservation stuff, because you got to have ownership in line. You know, so it gives us a good advantage in getting contracts, completing contracts, and you know, it looks good to the agency too. You know, our name is good. You know, they're a good bet. You know that we have one thing too that also proves that. It's called the AFA that we have with NRCS. You know, it's one of 2 in the nation, I believe, and we were chosen to implement that. And you know, I think that goes a long way with saying that, you know, we got a good natural resource kind of staff here, you know, that could take care of things like that. And you know, one of only 2 in the nation, you know, that's a pretty good indicator that, you know, they believe in us. So, you know, we've come a long way in getting our land developed. You know, before you know, this all the conservation started with Terry Buck. You know, she was the first soil conservationist here, and you know, she got a lot of fence put up around here, and that really helped a lot. You know, a lot of those fences are still up. You know, and if we could just keep on with that, you know, our borders need fencing. That's a big thing too, especially in the submarginals. You know, there's just a lot to be done, and I do want to be a part of it. If it's not on the council, that's fine, you know, I mean, but I want to be a part of it because, you know, I think I can contribute, and I had a hand in starting a lot of these, you know, I think to see them through like that. And that's another thing I learned too while working for the tribe is, you know, you want something done, you got to keep your shoulder on it, and you got to keep on it and just smile at everyone till it gets done. You know, that's the only way. If you sit back, wait for BIA, wait for signatures, wait for a department, it's not going to get done. You know, and you got to be persistent, and you got to persevere. You know, and it's got to have fortitude. You know, so I mean, you know, this position is challenging, and I really dig it. You know, it's a lot of fun, and it's gratifying. You know, when you feel like, you know, you get a win, even if it's a small win. You know, it feels good because you know you're working for your people, you're working for the greater good, and you know that does it there. You know, for sure, I think. Yeah, that kind of has jumped up a little bit too, you know, into my purview, you know, because of that, you know, the Little Rockies Christian camp, you know, you know, they lost their lease, and it was somewhat controversial, you know, and, but, you know, I suppose I do think, you know, I stated in some comments in there, you know, that this is an Indian reservation, you know, I don't think it's a Christian incubator. You know, I mean, we're not against people being around here like that, and there's there's plenty of faith, around here, and I've seen it, and it's strong, and we don't want to deny that to anybody, man, ever, I mean, your faith is your thing, but I mean, the only thing about that is if you're taking up a lot of resources that could be used for the greater good of everyone, not just this little sect here or whatever, then I think that not really a problem, but an issue that we can handle. And we're kind of taking some steps to do that too. We met with the bishop recently, and we got a better understanding of how, property changes hands with the church, some of the steps we're going to have to take, and yeah, it was pretty good. But what I learned from that meeting is that it's not going to happen overnight. These guys they have processes, and it's they're a church, but it's like a government agency too. They have internal processes that they have to follow, thresholds that if they're met, these things kick in. So it's going to be a process, but I think, the will of the people has been shown, and I think, they're agreeable to at least enter into negotiations, and if we have to just buy it off them, that's fine too, because, this is a big chunk of land we're talking about, and then, there's a lot of, kind of variables in there that we have to consider. We can't just put it right into farming or anything like that. It's got to be, it's got to have a good inventory. There's a lot of rumors about things up there we don't know. I mean, we'll just have to check it out, thoroughly for sure. But, I support religion, and as long as it's not taken from the greater good, I guess, and everyone's always welcome here. We'd never, turn people away or anything like that. We support religion, but they've been, and then St. Paul, my grandpa's name was Paul, so, I like that. But, yeah, I think they just have to, they're going to have to take a little bit of a back seat maybe, and, they're not going to be calling the shots or whatever, I think, that's one of the intents of our negotiations is, the community feels shut off or whatever from there somewhat, right? Like extravagant prices to have a funeral, they make you buy insurance. I had a community meeting there in December, and yeah, I had to buy event insurance, so that's kind of crazy. I never bought that before. But I understand, that's just they're trying to cover their stuff, so it wasn't a big deal. And the lady is super nice, so it was pleasant, and yeah, I haven't had a bad experience up there myself, so. But I can see, how people could feel, alienated from their land, or, there's that flooding that happens too. That I worked with NRCS when we did try to fix that corner up there, but it seems like it didn't take too well if it's still happening, so I mean, yeah, I think St. Paul's, the building's historic, it's beautiful, I got an opportunity to sit in there this winter all by myself, I went to meet that woman and she had to go grab something, and there's power there, man, for sure, I think it's just, you could feel it, but I mean, it's just different, So, but yeah, that was a nice experience to just sit there for a minute, in the silence, and, you think back of the history there, there's a lot of it. And yeah, that was just a nice time, and the lady is super nice too, so. We just want to support our people, and how they want to worship, not take that or deny them that right, that's a basic human right, I think, so. But yeah, we do want control of that, and then we don't want, outsiders calling the shots on there, I would think. So that's my stance on it anyway. Yeah, I think the majority of our population is off-res. I looked at, I think the enumeration came out recently, and I think there was 8 mountain GV pages and that reside on res, and 20 mountain GV pages that are off res, so there's quite a bit more that live off res, and one of the things I've been working on too, because I know this causes a lot of just a little bit of, not necessarily animosity, but like, if people feel like they're missing out on something, and it's always said that, well, they use my number, they use my head count to get funding, and that's true in some cases, but for the like IHS and BIA funding, they use census data, so we're not using our off-res members to get funding and then using it without including them. These are census-based numbers, and I'm working on getting a memo from our lawyers that says something to that effect, and that's not to discount their influence, because you look on the internet, our off-res members are like the most informed. They see things that we don't see here, and I've chosen to live on the res, but I've lived off the res too. I made my way in the other world for a bit, but I chose to live here. But that influence out there, we can't take that for granted. It's really valuable. There's a lot of things that we don't see, and that's the reason why we have meetings. That's why we try to take input from everyone, because there's things that might not be apparent to us that are obvious to others. So yeah, our off-res does need representation. That there's a system in there now in place where you choose the district that you want to be from. So by doing that, that would be your representative. But I can see the need and for an identified off-res representative. So no taxation without representation, right? So I think it would be invaluable, really. I think, but there's a lot of logistics and stuff that's got to be figured out before we do that. And we tried to do that secretarial to change a few things like the blood quantum, whatever. And we can see how hard that is to get the process even started. With BIA, we were trying to have that done, this year, but with their massive cuts and their loss of all their staff, it's just not going to happen. So that stuff, I agree there's a need for it, but it's just a ways away, I think, until everything kind of clears up a little bit more, for as far as the national, the federal government, So I think we do need to consider that for sure, and I don't know, there's got to be a way we can do it until then, without using Facebook, but comment boxes or something like that, because there's areas where there's a lot of our tribal members, like Spokane or Seattle, maybe, out that way. They kind of gather. I think there's some like in Minneapolis too. So there's we have this metropolitan influence that's out there that we're not really taking advantage of, and I would like to do that a little bit more. I think I'd mentioned to a few people about satellite offices, even one staff member. Just there's ideas out there, but it's tough to really it's hard on the council to get things done, because there is a process. There's there's policies that got to be written. There's bylaws and stuff, and it's not. You can't snap your fingers and then it's done. It's a process on here, and I think we got to. If people understood that a little bit better, they might have more patience with us. But yeah, it's tough. But I know we all expected this coming in. You got to have thick skin, and it hurts us. When we see our people suffering. Every one of those council members, they have good hearts, man. And they are there for the people. I don't think anyone just intentionally signs up, to dog the tribe or to bring it down. I think we just got to work together. That's the thing. And if we can work together, be on the same page, but that it goes back to some of the outdated thinking, things like that. And we've had opportunities for different things here, and we didn't jump on them through the years, not just on my term here. Through the years we've had opportunities. Either we weren't ready take advantage, or we just chose not to. You know, I mean, it's there's a man there. I always hear him say, "You got to risk it for the biscuit, man." You know, and I like that. So I think we do have to do that. You know, because you know if we're gonna bet on anybody, we got to bet on ourselves, man. You know, because you know I've seen the human capital that we can produce around here, and it is you know, spectacular, really, man. We got bright people that are just, you know, waiting for that opportunity, you know, for the tribe to use them. So I think when we're able to do that well, you know, then we'll have made some good progress, I think, because, you know, historically, what we do, you know, is we tell our people to go get your education, you know, they come back and we don't hire them, or they come back and they get hired and they, you know, tribal politics or whatever gets in the way, separation happens, and now they're all soured on working for the tribe. You know, that's happened a lot historically, you know, and you know, it's just I suppose that's the way of the world too, you know, like what do they say? I can't remember, you know, where the wicked win and the virtuous fall, you know, or whatever, you know, that's it happens enough in the world that there's an old thing about it, you know. So I mean, it happens here too, and we really want to get past that and use our people. That's my dream, is to have our people handling our affairs as much as possible, you know. I think that's there's a lot of pride that goes with that, you know, and that'll help lift us up as a people, you know, and we're all doing it together. So oh boy, yeah, that's eesh. You know, our we have a good chief, man, you know, that's we got a solid leader in there, you know, and we're trying to get him more funding, because you know there's a lot of competition for those jobs, you know. You know, a lot of places pay more, a lot of places don't have the politics like we do, and it's really tough for law enforcement to get everything taken care of, you know, and to keep people on staff, multiple officers patrolling, you know. There's a lot of it's just full of problems, you know. And but I think one of the main things is our funding, you know. You know, we've been funded at what is it, like a quarter of what we should be getting funded for the last 20 years, and it's you know, our budget stayed the same over that time, and you know, it's so egregious that there's a lawsuit that you know, they're trying to settle with us, so that they know they've done wrong, they know they've underfunded us. So it's just a matter of you know, how it's going to play out. How are we going to recoup those losses? How are we going to get our law enforcement? You know, our guys are solid. You know what I mean? And we have good equipment. We just need more staff. You know, I mean, because you know, the guys come and go. There's, you know, like I said, there's competition in these neighboring departments. But I think the leadership that we have there, you know, is solid. You know, they got good partnerships with these surrounding counties and everything, and it's just a matter of getting that funding, keeping people on staff, and being consistent. You know, I think if we could be, we also need a jail too. You know, we need a place to put people. You know, because it's, you know, that's kind of, we're so underfunded, you know, like you could cite and release is like the thing. You know, we don't like to say that, you know, it doesn't always happen, but I mean, sometimes it happens and there's no, you know, the justice isn't served, you know. I mean, and it's not just LE, you know, it's, there's a whole chain, you know, that goes down, and we really have to fix our court system too. There's we pass our reviews, you know, and everything, but you know, as far as business and everything, we do have to pick that up some, you know, and getting stuff taken care of, getting documents out, getting stuff processed, I think, but it's a long journey, and then that's one of those other things that I kind of don't know too much about, So I try to stay in my lane, but offer what I can on that, just common sense stuff, but it's a tricky kind of deal because, yeah, you don't want to be, you know what I'm saying? Like that old way is like, hey, don't be bothering this guy or whatever, and it's happened recently, in land, that happens past 5 years, there's, you get told to leave these guys alone or leave that guy alone, you know what I mean? That's what we're trying to move past, we want to be fair to everyone, enforce our policies across the board, and just, harmonious, and then, because when the land wins, when the land wins, we all win, man, I think that's another thing I kind of say that's corny too, but I do believe in that, I think when our land's in a good, productive, state, we're going to be, we're going to have revenue flowing, we're going to be maintaining our stuff, and it's going to be set up for our grandkids as grandkids, and that's the goal, is to leave something good and not to, endanger that life source that we're going to be given, with this, our water settlement. So. That's another tough one, I think there's arguments for both sides, really. But, it comes down to inclusion, exclusion, I guess, and I think, we need more Indians, man, in my opinion, I think, but see, when we do that, if we take more on like that, we have to marshal more resources for them, because, you could, like the IHS, you could expand your area and say, we want to help these guys too, but that doesn't increase your funding pool, So you got you're going to have a same funding pool with way more people in it. So that's what we got to think about too, can we effectively take care of our people if we start adding a whole bunch like that, I think it's going to take a lot of planning. But I do believe that's the way to go, I think, because what the other way is we're going to breed ourselves out, right? We won't have no enrollable people here soon, so yeah, I do believe we have to, there's a lot of planning that's going to have to go into that. It might have to be in stages or things like that, but yeah, I think, Indian's Indian, there's a lot of tribalism or whatever, but when it comes down to it, man, Indian's Indian, man, that's what I say. We're not a people that are going to be, kicking people away or anything, we want to help people, and we want to include them, and we want to make sure everyone's taken care of, at least their basic human rights, I think. Because we gotta, we still have a long way to go, and it's going to be on our youth, pretty soon to take up this mantle. And I know someday I'm going to be like one of them older fellas, I think, who's stuck in the past or whatever, that's going to be me here soon. So I'm ready for that, and I can see it even already kind of in a couple things, that I participate in. So, I'm looking forward to that though. And what I want to do is just, try to get some of our people, more of our people into ag, however we can, because that's going to be our lifeblood, our land, I've heard it said, is our backbone. So, when we get it in a good state, that's going to be sustaining our people, with our revenues and our food that's produced. It's it really is. We got to take care of that and make sure we hand it off to our grandkids in the best shape that it can be, so that they could continue, they could build on it. There's a lot of clout that we have that we don't take advantage of. I think we're the biggest landowners on the High Line, the largest employers besides BN, but they're multi-state or whatever. But yeah, there's we got half the population of Blaine County. I think we're there's clout that we have that we don't use. But I think, as these youth rise up, they're going to realize that, and they're going to start using that, because it's already, the revolution has begun. We didn't even know when, but it's begun and it's going. I mean, you could see it. You look around good enough and you'll see it. I think, yeah, I'm hopeful for not even cautiously optimistic. I'm hopeful, that our future is going to be good, because we have a solid foundation, and we stick to our policies. We get them, clocked in so that everything's fair, man, and we're going to have a good system here. We're going to take care of our people. And yeah, that's the dream, I guess, so. Yeah, we've met, we had 4 community meetings, I believe, and like they weren't packed or anything, but people came, and, the vast majority of what we heard was good, like, go for it, it'll create jobs, revenue, and so that's, and I figure, we have a couple good advantages as a tribe to doing that, and, I think we need to get it going. So we just passed it the other day. I think Councilman Ball used a politically savvy move there, and we got it passed through committee. But Monday, it's going to be it's up for ratification. So that'll be the the real vote on it right there. And I don't know. It's basically like the older councilman against kind of the younger council, not against, but you know what I mean. Our opinions differ on whether or not we should be taking advantage of that, and there's a lot of things that are open for interpretation in it. There's a lot of unknowns, but I think we can, I'm of the mind that we can participate in it safely, not harm our people, and make revenue off it. That's the idea, what I mean. But it's tough to convince someone that grew up, around that time, the reefer madness time, I mean, and I understand that, and it's nobody's fault, that's just the way the world was, but there's new information out there now, and there's studies. It's we can do it safely. That's what it comes down to, without endangering our people or things like that. It's it's tailor-made for us to hop right in and start getting revenue off of it. And I don't think there's another industry that we can do that as quickly or as cleanly. I mean, we're it's just right there, and I think we got to take advantage of it while we can. We're going to miss the boat again. Through, like I said, through the decades. We either weren't ready to take advantage of it, or we just decided not to. And we saw other tribes, other groups succeed at things like this, and if the will of the people, from what I've seen, is that yes, we should engage in this, and we can do it safely. You know what I mean? I think it's it is time for. And I always hope that I can do this. I always hope that I can put aside my personal bias for what the people want. I mean, I think that's really important. And you got to temper that with doing what you think is best too. But I mean, if 95% of people are telling you this and you think this other way, I mean, you got to consider it at least, right? And I just don't see the hold up if we could do it safely. I mean, there's 50 other tribes in the nation doing that, and none of them are getting raided. The BIA is not shutting down their funding. It's happening in other places. So I think, without a alternative, that could be as quick and clean as this, I think we should be taking advantage of it. So I think, yeah, we'll see Monday. I've been trying to tell a few people to contact your rep if you're supporting this. But yeah, it's going to be a big issue for sure if we take it on. We pretty much handed it over to Island Mountain. You know, if it does pass, they'll be handling it. You know, it's probably not the best thing for like a councilman to be the face of that or whatever. You know, so, but yeah, it's in the works, and we'll see Monday. If it doesn't happen Monday, then I guess we'll probably have to wait for the next council to try to take advantage. You know, but we've had great opportunities of people who are knocking on our door wanting to work with us because they see this sovereign market that we could take advantage of, you know, and these big businessmen, you know, are looking to try to work with us. And we worked it up twice and it failed both times, you know. So I mean, you know, this last time, hopefully third time's the charm, they say, you know. But yeah, I think it could be a good thing for us for sure, you know. I mean, especially with when we have to start producing our own revenue, however we can do that, we got to do it, you know. I mean, even if, you know, you don't like cannabis or whatever, you think it's devil's lettuce or whatever, but you know, we can get by that and use it for what we need to get done. That's what it is. It could be a tool, you know. It's not going to be a detriment. It's not going to bring, you know, our people down. You know, it's going to help stand them up, I think, you know, with jobs instead of handouts. You know, I think that's the thing, you know, that assistance and those handouts really kind of crippled us, you know, because, you know, you think of all these monies we've had in about the past 10 years, you know, that COBEL and ITMA, ARPA, CARES, you know, it's turned it into a lot of assistance for the people, and naturally, you know, the people took that as much as they could, which we all would have, you know, and I think that would have happened anyway. You played it out because, you know, councilmen, you know, they get on there to help and they want to help people, and they're not going to be turning people away when there's $40 million in the coffers there, you know. I mean, so I think they would have happened either way, but we just had to do it the right way. So, I mean, it just engendered that kind of an entitlist mentality, you know, and that's not how we need to be. You know, we need to stand up on our own and do things for ourselves. You know, that's what the big thing on the Indian always is, right? You know, you get free school, you don't have to pay taxes, you know, but doing these things is showing that we're beyond that, you know. We're taking care of ourselves and our people, and that's kind of the goal, I think, you know. So yes, we should be engaging in cannabis. We can do it safely, for sure. $100, huh? Yeah, I think, you know, I'd hope that, you know, we're still a tribe then, and we still have our identifiable characteristics, you know. I think, you know, I hope that we still have our covenants, you know, our two sacreds, you know, and I hope that there's the same reverence for them that we all carry. I hope that we're still engaging in our culture, you know. I hope that there's people that could still sing Indian, you know. I think that's something that's kind of dwindling down now, but there's a couple of good young drum groups around that I'm hoping for big things out of, you know. I think because Fort Belknap's always been represented good by good singers, you know. So that's another tradition we got to keep up, I think. But yeah, so these young fellas that are yet to come, you know, what I would say to them is, you know, remember where you came from, you know, remember this land, you know, this is our home, and we got to take care of it as best we can so that it's sustained us. It's sustained us all the way down to you guys. So it's your responsibility now to take care of that and keep it up for your grandkids, you know. And we always got to remember we're Aaniiih and Nakota people here, and you know, this is where we belong. You know, we have plenty of people that go out in the world and do great things, man, and we all love that, you know. But this is our umbrella, this is our home here, you know, and it's like, I don't know, it's just different, you know, when you, like, I came from working for the government to my tribe, and the difference is just monumental. You know, it's like, you know, you're trying to help your tribe before with these government programs, but now you're acting as an agent of the tribe to get involved in these, man. And it's so much, it's really feels like you're doing good, you know, I think. And if we could pass, you know, feelings like that on to our generations to come, I think, you know, we'll always have this place, I think, you know, until World War III or whatever. So yeah, I hope those young guys realize what they're being handed and take that responsibility serious, you know. So I hope you guys do.